A female cop and her team head out to find a little girl who calls 911, saying her mommy won't wake up. My mommy won't wake up, and I'm scared. But what Officer Nancy finds inside that house changes her life forever. It had been a hectic day at the station. Every officer was tied up on a murder case, and the emergency lines were flooded with calls from across the city. In the middle of all that chaos came a call that made the dispatcher pause. 911. What's your emergency? Silence. Then a small, wheezy breath. I'm hungry. Mommy won't wake up. A little girl. Her voice cracked, and she broke into sobs. Okay, sweetheart, where are you? The dispatcher asked gently. I don't know. Mommy told me to call 911 if something bad happens. The dispatcher tried to trace the call, but it came from a prepaid phone with no GPS signal. The line kept cutting in and out. Can you tell me your name? Maggie. Maggie. All right, Maggie. Do you know your address? There was a long pause. Then Maggie gave an address, but something told the dispatcher it might not be where she was right now. Can you look outside and tell me what you see? That might help us find you. They're big, gray houses. A big, angry dog that keeps barking. Trees. And a broken gate. Good girl, Maggie. Stay right where you are. We're sending someone to help you. The dispatcher relayed everything to Officer Nancy and her team. They headed straight to the address Maggie had given. The team checked the place carefully, looking for anything that matched her description, but nothing added up. Nancy knocked firmly on the door. Anyone home? No answer. She peered through the window. Everything inside was dark and covered in dust. It looked like nobody had lived there in a long time. Nancy spoke to a few neighbors. One man recognized the name. Yeah, the Fosters lived there. Jake, his wife, and their little girl Maggie. Do you know where they went? Nancy asked. The man shook his head. Jake died about 6 months back. Car accident. After that, he paused. They couldn't keep up with rent. Landlord didn't care. Just kicked them out. A friend of mine said he saw them in a poor area about 12 miles east of here. Following that lead, Nancy and her team drove out. It was getting dark, and to make things harder, the area they reached had no electricity, just rows of run-down houses sitting in silence. But what Nancy was about to walk into would stay with her for the rest of her life. Hold on, Nancy whispered, raising her hand for silence. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Her heart jumped. Maggie had mentioned a dog that wouldn't stop barking. That could be it. Let's move. Nancy led the team down a dim path until they came upon a small, crumbling house. She switched on her flashlight and scanned the area. Near the window, she saw a small figure, a little girl crying and waving at them. Outside, a stray dog charged toward them, barking wildly. Nancy aimed her flashlight beam directly at the dog and shouted a firm command. The dog flinched and backed off. Without waiting, Nancy kicked open the door and stepped inside. It's okay, don't cry. I'm here now, Nancy whispered, kneeling down as Maggie ran into her arms, clutching a worn little teddy bear. I'm hungry. Mommy won't wake up. She's been sleeping all day, Maggie kept saying over and over. Nancy's stomach turned. She gently carried Maggie outside and placed her in the patrol car. Give her some biscuits. I'll be right back, she told her team. Then she went back inside the dark house alone. She searched every room, calling out for Maggie's mother. Nothing. Then she noticed a small doorway leading to a basement. Nancy pointed her flashlight down the steps and carefully descended. There, on the cold floor, lay Maggie's mom, completely still. Nancy rushed over and touched her arm. It was cold, too cold. I need officers down here now, she called out, her voice breaking. She radioed for medics and social services immediately. An ambulance arrived shortly after. As paramedics carried the woman's body out, Nancy stood frozen, her heart sinking. How was she supposed to tell Maggie? This little girl believed her mom was just sleeping. Before she could think, Maggie came running. Mommy! Where are they taking my mommy? Mommy, wait! Nancy dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around Maggie tightly. Sweetheart, Mommy's going to the hospital so the doctors can help her. Just be a good girl and stay with me. Okay? No. I want Mommy. Let me go, Maggie cried, pulling at Nancy's jacket. Shh, Mommy will be okay. You'll stay with me until then. Maggie buried her face into Nancy's chest, sobbing. gripping her teddy bear like it was the last thing she had. Because it was. When social services arrived, they told Nancy the child would be placed in a foster home that night. Something inside Nancy snapped. No, Nancy said firmly. She's had the worst day of her life. She needs to eat, get clean, and sleep somewhere safe. She called her sergeant directly. I'm requesting emergency temporary custody for the night. I'll bring her to the center first thing in the morning. After a pause, her sergeant agreed. Nancy knew it was unusual. But she looked at Maggie, asleep in the back seat, and knew she couldn't leave her behind. When they arrived home, her husband Jacob opened the door and froze, staring at the sleeping child in Nancy's arms. My goodness, sweetheart, who is this? I'll explain everything. But not right now, Nancy said softly. I'm completely worn out. Can we eat first? Later that night, after Maggie was tucked in, Nancy told Jacob everything. How she found the girl alone in the dark. How she discovered her mother's body in the basement. How the autopsy would later confirm it was a heart attack. Does Maggie know? Jacob asked quietly. No. She thinks her mom's in the hospital. I don't know how to tell her. It'll break her. Jacob nodded slowly, then asked, So how long is she staying with us? Nancy was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised even herself. Jacob, what if we adopted her? He looked at her, stunned. You know how long we've been trying, Nancy said, her voice low. The doctors say everything's fine, but nothing ever happens. I've stopped believing it will. She paused. But tonight, when I was holding her, something changed. Like a piece of me clicked back into place. Jacob didn't answer right away. He sat quietly, watching Maggie sleep in the next room through the half-open door. Nancy, if we do this, we're responsible for everything. School, nightmares, scraped knees, all of it. You really think we're ready? Nancy looked at him and nodded. Jacob took a deep breath, then smiled. Then let's do it. 2 days later, Nancy took Maggie to her mother's funeral. As they walked through the cemetery, Maggie looked around wide-eyed. There are so many butterflies and flowers and candles. What are those crosses for? And what's inside that black box? Nancy's throat tightened. She knelt beside Maggie. Sweetheart, sometimes when someone is very special, God invites them to come live with him in his house up in the sky. It's called heaven. It's peaceful and full of love. A house in heaven? Maggie asked, eyes wide. Yes, honey. I want to see Mommy. Where is she? Nancy pulled Maggie close, blinking back tears. Your mommy went to live with God, and before she left, she asked me to take care of you. One day when you're older, you'll understand everything. After a long process of home visits, interviews, court hearings, and more paperwork than Nancy had ever seen in her career, the day finally came. Nancy and Jacob officially adopted Maggie. To celebrate, they invited family and friends. Laughter filled the house, music played in the background, and warmth returned to every corner. Jacob raised his glass, beaming. I used to think the happiest day of my life was when I married Nancy. I was wrong. The happiest day was when she stood at our front door, holding a little girl fast asleep in her arms, and asked me, Honey, can we be her parents? I couldn't say no. Maggie made us a family, so here's to my happy little family of 3. No, honey. Wait, Nancy cut in, smiling wide. Jacob turned to her confused. Not 3, she said, handing him an envelope. He opened it slowly and froze. Inside was a photo of a positive pregnancy test. Maggie made us a family, Nancy said softly, and now our family is getting bigger. For a moment, Jacob couldn't speak. Then his face broke open with joy, tears streaming down his cheeks. He laughed, he cried, he held the envelope like it was made of gold. Happy little family of 4, everyone, he shouted, raising his glass as the room erupted in cheers. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.